Most financial plans assume that life stays ordinary and orderly. Your income continues, markets recover, your health holds up, but future you won't care how elegant the plan was on paper. What they will care about is whether it gave them the control when life stopped cooperating. So the biggest regrets don't come from big market crashes. They come from realizing too late that the flexibility was never built into your plan. Hi, my name's Laurent Munier. I'm a partner and advisor here at Safe Pacific Financial, and we work with high-income Canadians who look financially secure but often lack the structure that preserves control over decades and generations. Today, I want to show you what future you will wish that you had built earlier, not to chase returns, but really to protect your optionality, to reduce your tax risk, and to prevent regret when the timing stops being negotiable. The number one thing is liquidity that you don't have to sell for. One of the biggest assumptions that most financial plans make is that future cash needs can be dealt with later. So people assume that when the time comes, the market's going to be up, that you can sell your assets easily, that taxes will be reasonable, and the timing will all work out perfectly. But that assumption could be an expensive mistake in a long-term wealth plan. The liquidity problems don't show up when things are going well. They show up when timing turns against you. They show up during market downturns. They show up during a health event. They show up during a business slowdown or unexpected family needs. And when you haven't planned for the liquidity in advance, then you're forced to solve this short-term cash problem by damaging your long-term strategy. And that's the difference between having wealth and having access, having liquidity, having cash. Now let's talk about some real numbers. Same amount of wealth, different outcomes. And we'll look at a realistic Canadian example. So we'll compare two Canadians. They're both 45 years old, both successful, both similar net worth, both similar investment performance. So person A invests everything into traditional growth assets. No structured liquidity, relies on selling assets or withdrawing taxable funds when cash is needing. Person B, same investments, plus structured liquidity built in advance. Uses the permanent life insurance strategies that we talk a lot about on this channel, where you can build up big cash inside of an insurance policy and then leverage it for spending or investing. So we took this 45-year-old, let's fast forward to age 60. Both of them suddenly need $250,000 to cover a healthcare or a medical support. Maybe they need to help a child or an aging parent, or maybe they have a business transition or a buyout or something like that. So something happens, they need $250,000 now. So what happens next? With person A, well, they would be forced to sell their investments. Too bad markets are down 20% right now, triggering capital gains because they did have to sell these investments. And then there's a tax that's going to take a significant bite. So if they take out $250,000, maybe their net usable cash after all of this is going to be around like $165,000 after paying tax. If they want the full $250,000, they might need to sell even more assets, which compounds the damage. Person B had pre-built liquidity that they can access. Don't have to sell anything. No forced tax event. Not dependent on if the market is up or down. They want $250,000 cash, they get $250,000 cash. Now, both of these people started with the same net worth. Both of them had the same success in investing. One had way less stress and a completely different outcome than the other. This is why future you is not going to regret being too conservative, right? Future you is going to regret not having liquidity ready to go at the right time. So when you need this $250,000, when the 45-year-old turns 60, they needed the cash. Once you sell those assets, and you especially sold them at the wrong time, the damage is permanent. Having planned liquidity preserves both capital and it preserves your choice and options of what to do and how to get the money. The second thing that your future you is going to really love about today you is that you structured your corporate structure to reduce your future tax pain. So future you is going to care far less about how much you earned and is going to care far more about how much you kept. So this is one of the most painful realizations for a Canadian business owner who waits too long to structure the corporation properly. So when the income is flowing, taxes is a tomorrow problem. But when it's time to take your wealth into your hands, you're going to sell a business, you're going to retire, you're going to pass assets to the next generation. Well, tax planning suddenly becomes the whole game. Ottawa wants their money, and they're really, really good at getting it. Don't ask me about what they're spending it on, but they're really good at taking it. If you wait too long to make the plan, a lot of your options could be gone, right? Here's a common and really costly mistake. And we see this all the time with successful entrepreneurs. They've got the retained earnings piled up inside the operating company, right? This is your profit. Often it's sitting in like a basic checking or savings account, not really doing anything. No holding company is set up. There's no clear dividend versus salary or capital extraction plan. They don't have any sort of corporate life insurance set up. They're not planning for their capital dividend account or their CDA. They might not even know that that's a thing. Their business is successful, but the structure isn't. So when you're in the future and future you says, how do I get this money out of the company efficiently? Well, the answer might be you can't, like not anymore. You could have, but you can't now. So let's talk about real examples. Same business, different planning. And this is like a totally realistic corporate scenario for a Canadian-controlled private corporation, a CCPC. So let's say $3 million in retained earnings over time. The business success is the same in both cases. The only difference is when did you do the planning? So scenario A, poor planning on getting the money out. So this is what you don't want to do. No holding company, no capital dividend account strategy, no corporate-owned life insurance. Dividends are paid sort of when reactively, not strategically. So after personal taxes, you've got this $3 million in the company and you take it out, probably 1.5 to 1.8 ends up in the owner's hands. The rest is dividend tax, integration drag, missed tax-free opportunities. They've also been paying themselves dividend the whole time and never a salary, so there's no accumulated RRSP room. Their credit situation also doesn't look as good for like traditional lenders if they want to buy real estate or anything like that because they don't have like a salary. Scenario B, you strategically structure your corporate structures. So you do have a holding company and you set it up early. You're tracking your CDA credits with your accountant and you're actually using the CDA properly. You have a corporate-owned life insurance policy and it's designed for tax-free capital flow. And then there's a plan for how you're going to get the money out of the corporation years in advance. So that same $3 million in retained earnings, under both scenarios, under scenario B, you take the money out, probably getting like 2.4 to 2.7 million of that into your hands for your family, right? Less going to Ottawa. What's the difference? We're talking about like $600,000 to $900,000 difference in your pocket for the exact same business success, the exact same $3 million in the company. No extra risk, no extra work, just a better structure that was implemented early with a good team. So this is why future you is not going to wish that you worked harder. Future you is going to wish that you structured your company smarter and that you did it sooner, because the corporate tax planning rewards foresight, not emergencies, not urgency. When you have to do things and you have to do them right now, your options often are limited. When you don't have to do them and you do them anyways, then you usually have plenty of options and plenty of time and plenty of people who can help you. The other third thing that future you is going to thank yourself today for is your estate liquidity, so that your family's not forced to sell assets. This is one regret that nobody really talks about while they're alive, but it's one that the family will feel the most. So I have a bunch of experience with this because I'm the chair of the annual estate planning summit that happens here in Vancouver. We talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of estate planning. I've been running this event for the past 4 years, and I've been on the organizing committee for 7 years. Most wealth isn't lost because of bad intentions or poor values. It's lost because there wasn't liquidity at death. Now, why do you need liquidity at death? Why do you need cash when you die? Well, you don't, but your family does. Summed up in one word: tax. So how does it work? When somebody passes away in Canada, the CRA doesn't wait for their money. They want their money now. The taxes are due at the next tax period, so the following April. And the timelines are fixed. There's penalties, there's interest that kicks in when the taxes are late. Also, this is probably a terrible time. You've just died. Your family emotions are probably really high because somebody important in the family has just died. If you don't have liquidity built into your estate plan, your family is going to be forced to make permanent financial decisions in a bad scenario, under pressure, often at the worst possible time. And also, who's making these decisions, right? It's your family, your executor. Are these people experienced professionals whose job it is to settle an estate? Are they tax experts? Are they corporate structure experts? Probably not, right? So the worst time, emotionally high and inexperienced people doing it. Not a good scenario. You know who's going to win in this scenario? The CRA. They're going to eat up your money. So the reality is that people don't plan for, right? Like, this is high-income Canadians and the business owners, they often pass away with their wealth really concentrated in a couple of places. So this could be your privately held business, the thing that made you rich in the first place, a lot of real estate, long-term investment portfolios, and in some sort of corporate structure. This is really where all the wealth is. So on paper, you look rich. In practice, there's no cash, there's no liquidity. And this is where the problem begins, right? So here's a real Canadian estate scenario. And this is a really a super realistic situation that happens far too often. So the estate has a successful operating business, multiple real estate properties, long-term investments in a portfolio that's well managed by somebody, minimal liquid cash at death. So the final tax bill comes in, you've passed away, your estate owes $800,000. So this includes the capital gains that were triggered at death, any deferred tax liabilities that you had, your corporate tax exposure. Now the family needs to figure this out, and they need to figure this out fast. Where are they coming up with $800,000 to give to the CRA, right? If you don't have estate liquidity and you don't have a dedicated plan for the liquidity, probably going to sell assets and under pressure. Hopefully the market's up and it's not a bad time to sell. Your business is probably going to be disrupted or potentially partially sold or sold completely. The real estate might be listed at the wrong time by the wrong person in the wrong jurisdiction. What if your kids don't live in the city that you live in and you have somebody in a different country that's trying to manage your estate from long distance, right? That's not fun. The negotiating power disappears because all of your options are gone once you die. The CRA wants their money and they want it now. And there's no messing around. If you needed to make a plan, you needed to do it before, not now. So the family isn't choosing what to sell. They're selling whatever they can, often at a discount, potentially in the wrong market cycle, for sure in the worst emotional moment. And right now I'm talking about hopefully your family likes each other and nobody's fighting, because if they're fighting, take everything I just said and multiply it by 1,000 and makes it way harder. So the wealth that you took decades to build can be absolutely decimated and severely reduced in just a couple of months because of some poor planning that didn't happen 20 years ago. Now, what happens when you have properly planned estate liquidity, right? Same estate, but with liquidity planned in advance. The taxes are paid cleanly and immediately. Nobody's forced to sell anything. They can if they choose, but they don't have to. The business continues operating. The real estate stays in the family if they want to keep it, and they don't have to sell it. The heirs, right, your family, your legacy, retains control, and they have choices. And they don't have to make quick decisions in an emotionally unsettling time. And the difference isn't the amount of wealth. The difference is the preparation that happened, right? Your estate liquidity turns into a chaotic moment, or your estate liquidity is a controlled transition. Which one do you want? You want the chaotic or you want the control? So future you is definitely not going to regret planning for growth. Future you will regret leaving your family with a giant problem that you could have solved quietly, efficiently, in advance. The estate liquidity isn't about death. It's about protecting the people who you live for, right? You had a great relationship with your family. Everything was awesome. And then when you passed away, the estate was not managed properly, and it became emotional turmoil of people having to figure out how to do all this stuff. It leaves a bad mark, right? Better to go out clean and everybody's, well, sad, but happy, than sad and also more sad. So here's another thing that probably future you is not going to be mad about, is using your insurance as an asset and not just the protection. So one of the most common regrets that we hear from the high-income Canadians that we work with isn't about the investment returns or missed opportunities. It's, I should have set this thing up earlier. So one thing that we're really good at is the permanent life insurance, especially the participating whole life insurance. It's rarely understood as an asset, but this is what we do every day. Most people think of it purely as the protection, something that you buy to cover some sort of risk, and then hopefully you never use it. Because of that, many people delay dealing with that because, well, I'll do it later, I don't need it yet, I'm going to focus on my investments first. But the permanent insurance, it doesn't reward urgency, it rewards time. Time is the one variable that future you can't get back. And this is why waiting is so expensive. Unlike term insurance, the participating whole life insurance is built on very long-term compounding. It's built on growing through this dividend that pays into the cash value. It's built on predictable cash value growth. It's built on tax-efficient access. So the earlier that you can start it, the more efficient it becomes. Not because of risk, but because you're holding it for longer. It's not losing to inflation. It's not losing to the cost that you put into it. It's about making sure that you don't lose these compounding years. Now let's talk about some real numbers. Same goal, different starting age. And this is a very realistic Canadian example of using participating whole life insurance. And we're going to talk about somebody who's starting this at age 35. They're putting $20,000 a year into one of these types of policies with setups for really strong early cash value growth, with really high long-term efficiency, and a lot of flexibility because they could get policy loans when they need to use the money. They could get collateral loans. So this keeps their liquidity set up, and it provides for liquidity on estate planning. The other person that we're going to talk about, same situation, they're going to start at age 50. So they're going to put in annual premiums of $35,000 to $40,000. Slower, earlier cash build, lower efficiency per dollar that you contribute. And then you also, the biggest one is you lose the years of compounding. So the person who started at 35 has 15 more years of compounding in their favor. Both policies can aim for the same long-term outcome, but one requires nearly double the annual cash flow to get there, right? The difference isn't inflation. The difference is that 15 years cost of waiting. And then the real regret isn't really the premiums that you put in. Like future you's not going to look back and say, I wish my premiums were lower. They'll say, I wish I did this earlier. I wish I had more years of compounding. I wish I had built this liquidity earlier. I wish I had more flexibility today. The permanent insurance, when you structure it properly, becomes a balance sheet asset. It becomes a source of efficient liquidity. It becomes a tool for your corporate planning, for your estate liquidity, but only when you set it up and you give it enough time to work. Insurance doesn't punish risk takers. It quietly penalizes procrastination. Another thing that future you is not going to be mad about is the simplicity and the coordination that you want to have. So as your wealth grows, complexity grows. More types of accounts, more structures, more professionals working with. And this complexity might be unavoidable, but the disorganization that comes with it is not, right? You can be organized doing this. One of the biggest mistakes that we see people making is assuming that having more advisors automatically means you're going to have a better plan. In reality, future you is not going to care how many experts you worked with. They'll care whether everything actually worked and whether it worked together. So here's what future you is not going to want. So when future you is looking back, what they don't want is a bunch of advisors working in silos and not talking to each other and not coordinating. What they're not going to want is investment strategies that ignore tax consequences. What they're not going to want is insurance policies that don't integrate with your estate plan. What they don't want is insurance policies that expire before your estate plan. What they don't want is corporate decisions that accidentally create giant personal tax problems later. Another thing they don't want is conflicting advice or overlapping strategies. They don't want the guesswork during critical moments, because when life forces a decision, which happens, right? It's during a downturn, a health event, something happens with family, there's a business transition, you're moving, like there's a lot of reasons that life happens, or potentially death. We're talking about estates. There's no time to reconcile all these disconnected plans, to work with all these different advisors that haven't talked to each other, or to coordinate all these things. You got to do those before, when you have plenty of time. So what future you will actually value? So instead, future you is going to want one integrated strategy, not 5 separate ones. Future you is going to want tax clarity, not surprises. Future you is going to want predictable access to cash, not we'll figure it out later. Future you is going to want confidence that every moving part was designed to work together. Simplicity doesn't mean fewer tools. It means fewer decision points under pressure. And that's where the high-income Canadians struggle. It's not with effort or intelligence or discipline. It's with coordinating all of these things. And why does coordination matter? And it matters even more as the wealth grows, right? So as you hit higher income and net worth levels, the cost of not coordinating, the cost of misalignment expands and gets pretty big. So for example, you have an investment strategy that ignores tax. Well, later, this could cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. Or you have insurance that's not coordinated with corporate planning. Well, you could waste your CDA potential and potentially lose hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to tax. Or an estate plan that doesn't account for liquidity. This forces unnecessary asset sales that hopefully are not at a bad time. Or corporate decisions that are made in isolation could create irreversible tax outcomes in the future that you're screwed. Each decision may look reasonable on its own, but when you put them all together, they quietly erode your wealth. So future you is not going to regret not chasing higher returns. They're going to regret not having a clean, organized, coordinated system that's written down and it's understood by all the players, right? That's what future you wants. And then the real goal is you want to have fewer moving parts, especially at the important critical moments, right? The resilient financial plans reduce complexity, especially at the time when it matters the most. So this means that the liquidity is in place when you need it, for good or bad. The tax outcomes are modeled in advance. You already know what you're going to do next year. The access strategies are already tested. So if you need money now or you need money later, you already know where it's coming from. Your advisors are aligned. They've met, they've talked. The plans are coordinated. So the decisions are calm and easy to make. They're not reactive and you're not introducing people at the worst time. And that's what simplicity really means when you're at that level, right? You don't want less sophistication, but you want more control and you want more clarity and organization. Now, how do we help you this? How do we help set this up early? We don't just build plans around chasing market returns or reacting to short-term noise, right? You build these long-term plans around durability. So we ask a different set of questions than most advisors will. Does this still work if everything goes wrong? What happens if you stop earning income or you just want to take a 1-year trip to Thailand? How does this affect your taxes in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, or at death? And then most importantly is, what will future you wish that you did today? Like, let's get that done. So our role is really to help you to answer those questions now when you have time to sit and think about them, not later when life forces you to make these decisions now. So what do we actually do with our high income and our incorporated Canadian clients? We build that liquidity before you need it. So when you need to access the cash, It doesn't depend on market timing. It doesn't depend on selling something. It doesn't depend on a bank approval. We want to reduce your lifetime tax exposure, not just this year's tax bill. So by structuring the way that you get money out of your corporation, by structuring your insurance, by structuring your estate strategy, this can compound your tax efficiency, especially over decades, right? This adds up to hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars. We can help to coordinate the major moving parts of the plan, the corporate structure, the investments, the insurance, the estate plan, the tax strategy. These are designed together, not individually in isolation. We could also stress test your decisions by thinking about it as your future self, right? So what happens if the market goes down in whatever market you're in? What happens if you need to transition something, if you're coming out of your business or you're transitioning your whole life or something like that? What happens if a major health event happens? What happens when you pass? Does your plan still work when all of these conditions are imperfect, right? And how does it survive for the next 20 or 30 or 40, 50 years, right? Not just now, not just next year, but decades from now, generations from now. And then why does starting all of this early, why does this is so important, right? The most powerful advantage in planning isn't just the intelligence or having the income, it's the time. Time gives you lower costs for most things. It gives you more flexibility. It gives you better tax positioning, better bargaining power, fewer forced decisions later because they're planned for. So a lot of the regret that we see come from strategies that are correct in theory, but maybe they were implemented too late to be fully effective, or maybe they're in silos and they don't talk to each other. Our job is to help you avoid that. So the conversation that future you is going to say thank you for is, not making reckless decisions. It's making good decisions at the right time, not good decisions too late, or good decisions that you want to make, but you can't anymore because it's too late. So future you is going to wish that they had liquidity in the plan, some sort of cash extraction and tax minimization before balances get too large and these things get really expensive. Having estate liquidity so that your family isn't forced into decisions at the worst time. And they're going to also wish that we use time as an ally, so instead of a constraint. So if you are a high-income Canadian, you're a business owner, the best moment to address all these things is before you need to, right? Before the market goes down, before you sell your business, before some giant tax bill comes along and forces you to do something. And so this is what our discovery conversation is for. So when you work with us, the first thing we do, it's a discovery. And you can book this on our website. It's at safepacific.com. There's no charge to meet with us, and we'll tell you if we're a good fit to work with you or if you're a good fit to work with us. We're not trying to get clients that we don't want to work with. But really, if you go to our website, safepacific.com, there are so many buttons on that site where you can book a meeting with us. You can send us a message and somebody will set up a time for you. And what we can do, we'll review your current structure. We'll review where you have liquidity concerns, like if something happens, where you're getting money, where you're going to have tax concerns, where there's coordination gaps. We're going to highlight what future you might regret so that you can fix that now. And we also want to map out like what are next steps, right? Without pressure, without product pushing. It's really about making the plan so that it works. Now, if this video resonated with you, number one, set up a meeting time with somebody on our team. There's going to be a link below the video, or like I said, just go on our website, safepacific.com. There's links all over there where you can send us a message or book a time. But if you really learned something today, send this to somebody, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. All of these things help the algorithm to show this video to more people who are doing well financially, who are business owners in Canada, because the people that we're addressing with this video is a very, very small niche of Canadians. So this isn't general advice that's useful for a lot of people. So it's hard to find the smaller niche of people. Do all those things. It really helps. I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank you for subscribing. I want to thank you for clicking that like button. That's it for me today. I'll see you on the next one.